One thing that a lot of people rely on in order to get by, especially in hard economic times, is their home equity. And it turns out that you have about $731 billion right now in home equity that is completely locked up due to negative credit shocks. And if you've never heard of this, I'm going to talk about it and let you know what all this means. Now, you guys know how I feel about using your home equity for anything unless you're new to the channel. And basically my stance on it is don't use it. Unless you're using it to buy an investment property that is actually going to be putting net cash flow in your pocket each month, I wouldn't touch it. But a lot of people use it to pay off their credit card debt, to pay off college tuition bills, to pay off, a kitchen remodel, whatever, just crazy things that really it shouldn't be used for at all. So according to a new report that just came out this week, 9% of all homeowners with a mortgage, which is about 4.6 million people in the United States, experience a job loss or another negative career shift in a given year. And what that does is it carries the potential of tanking their credit score. And as a result of this tanking credit score, the homeowner faces the possibility of being blocked from using their home equity in a time of need. Now, this is why we talk about having an emergency fund. This is why we talk about living below your means. This is why we talk about making sure that you are out of debt, so you don't have to rely on your home equity in a time of need. But so many people just don't do this, and they end up in this situation where they lose a job, they have no plan B, no extra money to fall back on, and they turn to their house as a possible way to survive. Well, here's a great example, guys, showing you how the Florida housing market collapse is alive and well, because this house was purchased back in 2021 for $1,050,000, and in 2022 it was swiftly listed for sale for almost $3.6 million and listed for rent for $15,000. And along the way, the house was kind of taken off the market, put back on, and now they're sitting at $3.2 million on the market with no buyers, almost 3 years after listing the house for sale. And problems with houses like that is people still believe that that house is somehow worth $3.2 million when they only paid $1 million for it. There's never been a time in history where houses have tripled in value practically overnight like this in just a span of a few years, and that was just how it was. It never happened, guys. And a lot of these sellers are going to have a rude awakening and come to the realization that they're not going to be able to sell these homes for anywhere near what they thought they would be able to. Now, will they be able to sell it for more than they paid for it, more than $1 million? Probably, but they're not going to be getting 3.2 for it, which is pretty obvious after being on the market for close to 3 years. Anyways, going back to my story here, a homeowner who's been laid off and no longer has a job right now could see their credit score plummet and be barred from taking out a loan against their home equity, which could end up making the difference between some people being able to make ends meet and paying their bills and not being able to do that. And there are two main reasons for this. One is persistently high long-term interest rates and job volatility. And the main problem with higher interest rates is that they significantly hike up the cost of borrowing against home equity, making a traditional cash-out refinancing less desirable because they increase a homeowner's monthly mortgage payment, which is something you're not going to be able to qualify for, especially if you just lost a job. And then, of course, you have the instability of the employment situation right now. A lot of people don't have solid work nearly as much as they used to, especially if you get laid off. A lot of people are self-employed. They're doing gig work. They're doing frequent job transitions. And all these changes cause financial instability for people and can also make it so that you will not qualify for a home equity loan or home equity line of credit. Lenders like to see stability, and if you don't have it, then probably they're not going to lend to you. And we've already seen the layoffs at the highest that they have been, at least in the last 10 years, in the month of March in 2025, with no signs that that situation is going to get any better anytime soon. So what this means is a lot of people are not going to be able to fall back on their home equity in tough times as they lose their jobs and as things start going sideways for people like they might have thought. A lot of people thought maybe this is going to be their magic bullet. Now, you could still access that equity if you're willing to sell your house and take the proceeds, and then you have a little extra money to live on if you can downgrade your lifestyle. But that's going to be the only way somebody in that position can access the equity from now on. And one of the main issues, guys, is people get so used to a lifestyle, right? You build this life for yourself and you're used to a certain level of enjoyment and amenities that you get from your lifestyle. And once that's no longer available because of a hardship, a lot of people have a hard time giving that up or making a sacrifice or putting things in reverse in any way. But unfortunately, if you find yourself in a position like this in 2025, you're going to need to make that sacrifice. You're going to have to swallow a little bit of pride and potentially sell that house or get another job that's going to be able to pay for that lifestyle, because there's really no other way. It's either that or you're going to end up losing your entire lifestyle and your entire family is going to go broke. And it turns out the western region of the United States is actually the largest part of the country that is finding themselves locked out from an estimated $284 billion in housing equity. In the South, people are locked out from $247 billion in equity. In the Northeast, it's $149 billion, and in the Midwest, it's $121 billion. Inaccessible. But what this whole story highlights is the overall reaching issue, which is that people just rely far too heavily on their home equity to be able to maintain any sort of lifestyle, guys, which is just not the way it should be. You need to be the one earning the income, not your house, okay? That should just be a bonus for you. Now, one thing we've also talked about is how the home sales are sitting at 30-year lows right now in the US market. And the reason for that is because most people can't afford a house. But there is a group of people who are still buying. It's the well-to-do people that are not concerned about finances. And the largest generation that is in that income group is not a huge surprise. It's baby boomers. In fact, baby boomers accounted for 42% of all home buyers, while millennials accounted for only 29%. And just a year earlier, baby boomers were only 31% of home buyers and millennials were 38% of home buyers. So pretty much baby boomers have been supporting the entire housing market, some millennials too, and only very rich ones. And the thing is, a lot of boomers are buying these homes in cash right now, guys. And periodically, I like to explain on the channel why we continue to see the median home price continue to go up across different indexes like the Case-Shiller Home Price Index, for example. This is the reason why. You have a select group of people in this country where money is not really a concern right now when it comes to the price of real estate or buying, so much so that many of them can afford to pay cash. So when you have a lot of home sales happening on the higher end of the market like this, especially paying cash, and it makes it look like the median home price continues to go up everywhere throughout the country, which is just not how real estate works. But that's what those big national indexes like to paint the picture that that's what's happening. And part of the reason baby boomers have the money to be doing this and purchasing homes in all cash is because they have likely owned their homes the longest and have been able to realize all the appreciation that has happened over the past 20 or 30 years. And then you sell a home and now you have all of this money that you can pay in cash for a new one. But here's something I want everybody to think about, okay? Baby boomers are the oldest generation that's still alive for the most part, except for a very small percentage of the silent generation. And many of them are retired or entering retirement and don't really have all that much time left. You know, maybe 20, 30 years at best for some of them. So one day, when they pass away, they're not going to be here to be doing all this buying and selling of real estate, right? So somebody's going to have to take their place. And here's the thing. About 70% of homes that get inherited end up being sold right away. And when a lot of these baby boomers start passing away and those homes get inherited and passed down to their heirs, many of them are going to be sold, which means you're going to see a lot of homes hitting the market all at once over a span of decades. There's going to be a very healthy and steady supply of these homes hitting the market. even if a lot of them choose not to sell, what are they going to do? They're going to rent it. They're going to do something. Most people don't have the money to just hang on to real estate and have 2 or 3 or 4, homes to maintain and not rent them out. And that's what you keep hearing being referred to as the silver tsunami. But the question is, who's going to be rushing into the housing market at this time when all these homes come for sale, when the baby boomers are no longer there? This is a huge demographic shift that we are facing in this country that most likely is going to lead to home prices coming down quite substantially during this time. But not all baby boomers are in such a lucky financial position. In fact, there are a lot of older adults right now who are carrying quite a bit of debt into retirement, which obviously weighs down their quality of life in retirement pretty substantially. For instance, in 1989, 58% of older adults over the age of 50 carried debt into retirement, which is already a surprisingly high number back then. And as of 2020, that number has jumped to 78% of adults over 50 carrying debt into retirement. That's almost everybody, guys, which kind of goes against the rule of retirement. You're supposed to retire with no debt. That was kind of like the golden rule of retirement for a long time that seems like almost everybody's breaking. And one of the biggest forms of debt that retirees are retiring with is mortgage debt. And a lot of this is due to a couple of different things: rising cost of living, rising expenses before retirement, and divorce. Because let's say, for example, you are married for 15 years and you bought a house when you first got married. Now the house is half paid off, and then you get divorced and you have to move. Well, suddenly you got to start all over, which completely starts over your time frame of how long it's going to take you to pay off that house, unless you are making a good enough income where you can get a 15-year mortgage on your new house, or just buy out your partner in the divorce of your old house and continue with that 30-year mortgage. So unless you're in one of those two camps, you are now going to have to start over with a new 30-year mortgage. Or if you're lucky enough to even stay married, just staying married, if your income situation's not great or your financial skills are lacking, then you're going to be somebody who's always behind the 8 ball, somebody always trying to catch up on everything. And going back to my story at the beginning of this video about how a lot of people have always relied on home equity to get by, well, this is part of the reason why a lot of people are retiring with debt as well. Because when you measure the home equity for the bottom 90% of people in this country, so if you're not in the top 10% of earners, so it's basically everybody, right? Their home equity has barely increased over the last 40 years. Why? Because lenders have made it very easy to borrow equity from their home. They've lowered down payment requirements to get into a home. A lot of people put nothing down or a very small percentage to get in these days. And anytime there are major expenses and people have any substantial amount of equity, people have been trained and taught to go ahead and borrow against that. The moment you have an extra $20,000 or $30,000, you can pull out of your home. And so this is very bad financial habits that people have gotten used to and addicted to, quite frankly, in order to live. And now people are paying the consequences of it in retirement. People have also been able to get things like car loans, which is something that didn't exist a long time ago. And rather than pay for the car in cash, well, now you have that loan too. So the more debt that people have, then the less you're going to be able to save for retirement and the less you're going to be able to pay off all of the debts that you have. So it is just a downward spiral effect. In fact, right now, about half of all older adults that were surveyed by AARP use credit cards to cover basic living expenses. And then when you toss in the home equity loans, the medical costs, student loans, auto loans, and mortgages, the accumulation of all this debt and all these payments, it's too many for older people who are entering retirement, or it just prevents you from being able to retire a lot of times if you're stuck with all this stuff. And one thing a lot of homeowners do as like a sort of safety net to prevent themselves from having to come out of pocket for a major expense on their house is they will buy a home warranty. And some people swear by them and have nothing but good things to say. Other people have had nothing but bad experiences with them, just like this woman here in this story I'm about to tell you. Because Sears is one of those companies that offers home warranties, and The company promised to replace appliances for 2 customers who have now spent months getting nowhere. They even had to contact the local news to get this story out there and try to spread some bad publicity about this problem, okay? This woman that they talked to for this story says that her appliance delivery has been rescheduled 4 times now with Sears, and they never showed up. They said that they would deliver in 2 weeks. They never showed up, and now they're on round 4. They didn't call to say that they weren't coming. They never tried to reschedule. They just pulled a complete no-show. Very disrespectful. So this woman pays $60 a month for her Sears home warranty and had to spend 5 months trying to get help for her broken refrigerator before all of the no-show deliveries. Can you imagine that? This is yet another reason I tell people you need to be able to have that emergency fund, that safety net on your own, okay? Because relying on services like this don't always work out, guys. And then what ends up happening, what do you got to do? You got to take a day off of work. You have to block out your whole day to stay home because they give you those huge delivery windows. Oh, we'll be there between 8 a.m. and 12 noon, right? And so you got to stay home for half the day, if not all day, and then they never show up. And basically, the scam that Sears is pulling is they say that they're going to show up. They have the appointment scheduled, but when the time comes, they'll call you and say, oh, well, we actually don't have that appliance in our warehouse, so we're going to have to delay us coming out there. So that's another common trick that they're pulling too. So people are going months and months without their stove, their dishwasher, refrigerator, or whatever, waiting for Sears to come through. And think about it, if you're paying $60 a month, which is about $700 a year for a home warranty, if you were just saving that money yourself, you would have the money for that new stove or the new dishwasher at least. The fridge is gonna cost you more than that, but still you get the idea, right? So say you've been paying for this home warranty for 3 years, you should have enough money to buy a new fridge, dishwasher, and stove. And just have a little bit of financial discipline and save that money yourself. Sears is claiming that it's all just a problem with inaccurate inventory availability, and that's why this is happening. But still, there's no excuses for not informing your customers that there's a problem or a delay in their order and giving them a realistic expectation of when that's supposed to be delivered for a paying customer. Okay, there's no excuse for mistreatment like this. But since this was in the news, they actually said that if the appliances are not delivered by next week, they will provide the option to cancel their orders and issue them a check for the authorized amount, whatever that is, right? Probably the cheapest version of the dishwasher or stove that they sell. So once again, guys, this kind of just wraps into all the things we talk about on this channel. Get out of debt. Stop borrowing against your house. Stop having car loans. All of these things are just going to drag you down financially. And then when you actually need something like something as simple as a new dishwasher, you have to jump through hoops and loops with one of these home warranty companies to try and get it, when you could just go out right now, pay for one in cash, and not have to worry about it, have it installed the same day. That sounds like a much better option if you ask me. But hey, what do I know? So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.